What's up, Marvel fans? This is AntMan here for E equals MCU, and I have an updated MCU project list for how I am ranking all of the canon MCU projects thus far. Now, this is subject to change. It has been updated and changed. I have added ShangChi and What If to this list. I know there's other things we could add, but without further ado, let's get into it. All right, kicking it off, we have The Incredible Hulk. While I did enjoy this movie, and it had a lot of potential and a lot of setup in it, you can tell it was early Marvel, and it just was a little disjointed from the rest of the MCU. There were some things that are now being able to be paid off, but we'll have to see how this evolves in the future with the characters. All right, next we have Thor: The Dark World. This was an okay movie, blockbuster, just didn't do it for me. It had a lot of problems with the production, so that's kind of the excuse as to why it ended up that way, although Loki did have a great performance in it. And next we have Captain America: The First Avenger. Again, this movie for me, because it was a flashback in the 40s, it was a setup movie, and with all of the Marvel setup movies, you're gonna have the same kind of problems. Now, this movie did have Agent Carter in it, and a rare appearance from the great actor Tommy Lee Jones, so gotta applaud that. And next we have Man 2. I literally fell asleep on this movie in the movie theaters when I saw it the first time. Upon going back and watching it, it does have its moments. I mean, you get the Justin Hammer dance scene, and then you see Pepper and Black Widow's reaction to it, which I thought was also hilarious. You also, you get your new roadie in this movie, and overall, this movie was just serving as a setup for what was to come, and I think it suffered because of that. And there's a few other movies that also suffered because of their setup movies. So, and next we have Thor, the original Thor. And I thought this was a pretty good setup movie. The way they told the origin story, it just didn't have enough for me. And I think during this time period, Marvel Studios was really just trying to crank them out, because the light at the end of the tunnel was the Avengers. So you got Natalie Portman. A lot of people didn't like their interaction and everything, but I thought it was overall a pretty decent movie. And the next movie we have is Iron Man 3. The main problem with this movie was the Mandarin and how they played the Mandarin. It was an entertaining movie. It was pretty good. Had good story development for all the characters involved. It was a good cap for the Iron Man series, but it just didn't have enough. I don't know if I like the decisions that were made in this film with Shane Black and everything, and it suffered because of it, but still overall decent movie to me. And then next we have Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And this movie had a lot of hype on it. It was a bit of a letdown, but it did have some cool parts to it. I mean, the opening scene with Groot dancing is historic. And the fact that you had Ego the Living Planet in it, I thought overall was pretty good. You introduced a lot of new characters with Mantis, and again, it was kind of a in-between movie that didn't really have anything else to do with anything else, but overall still solid movie. James Gunn, good job. All right, the next movie we're going to go into is Captain Marvel. Same thing. I kind of felt like this movie was bland in the same way that Doctor Strange was. Didn't really find its footing for what it needed to be, but her character is cool, very powerful, and you got to see that, and I feel like they rushed it because they needed to get her in there before Endgame, but that's just me. Coming in just above that, I have the original Ant-Man. It's another origin movie, but for me, I rank it above Doctor Strange and Captain Marvel because of the comedy element to the film. A lot of people may not have it as high on their list because of that, but I really like the characters in it and how funny it was, and that's the role it's supposed to play in the MCU. You know what I mean? Like, it has its own little carved out area. It's not as spectacular as a lot of the other films. And right after that, we're going to go right into the sequel, which is Ant-Man and the Wasp. I feel like this movie was slightly better than Ant-Man, but still lacked a lot of the action elements to it, and they still haven't done Evangeline Lilly justice with the Wasp character yet. But I feel like we may get a nice third installment to these films, so I can't wait for that. All right, next for me, we have the animated series, the first animated series for Marvel Studios, What If. Now this was kind of a toss up because What If had a lot of things to do. There were a lot of cool things in the episodes, but for me overall, none of it really landed. Now I am told that this follows the comic books pretty closely, so that's the way it's supposed to be, but it just didn't really vibe with me, with the pacing and just some of the stories they were coming up with of What If. So these characters may show up again, and they have a larger role to play maybe in the multiverse of things, but for me it just didn't land like I think they thought it would land with the fans. But the like the Marvel zombies and Thor and the Killmonger episode. There's a lot of good episodes. So, but for me, this is where I have to put it on my list. So, what Marvel's What If? All right, now coming in next, we're gonna get a little bit more recent, and at number 16, we're gonna go with the new Black Widow film. And again, this is another origin movie that's not heavily tied into the rest of the MCU and what's going on. So it's kind of a setup movie, and it's kind of left out in its own space because a lot of the characters were never introduced before, and we still didn't get the movie that we wanted to see for Black Widow, and I think they missed the mark on that. So if they do another one, they gotta tell the Budapest story. They gotta tell it, and they gotta tell it right. 20, Doctor Strange, and this is an origin movie, and these next couple of movies are origin movies, and you can interchange them. Overall, the movie has some cool elements to it. I wish it would have been a little bit darker. I wanted to really see Doctor Strange be the horror genre for the MCU, and it's a cash cow, so they didn't want to really mess with the formula. That's why Scott Derrickson left the sequel. But this movie was solid, had some cool parts to it. All right, now just above that, I'm gonna go with ShangChi here, and it's very similar to me because it's an origin movie, but it had a lot of cool elements and a lot of things they introduced. The way they used the 10 rings and reimagined the 10 rings was cool. You're introducing the mythology and the dragon and everything in this, and overall, ShangChi just as a character, he's very Disneyfied kind of character, but it kind of works just because the world that he brings with him, kind of like with Black Panther, the world that he brings with him is so rich, it's going to enrich the MCU for years to come. So I'm going to go with ShangChi here. It wasn't as good as Campia said it was to me, but I understand what he was trying to do, but whatever. So next Widow movie, and that's Avengers Age of Ultron. Now this movie, the problem with this movie, it was the in-between Avengers movie, and it was a setup movie. There was a lot going on. We got a lot of new characters. We got Wanda, we got Pietro, we got Vision, and all of those moments were very awesome. I think you could tell that Whedon was a little burnt out doing this film, and I think it suffered because of it, but it was still a good film. All right, number 14, we have SpiderMan Homecoming. And this was another like an origin movie for his character. It was playing in a different genre because they're going for a younger audience with this, and I appreciate it for what it was. I thought that the Michael Keaton Vulture was probably the best part of that movie, and that scene that he had with Peter. All right, now finally getting to the Disney Plus shows. Going number 13, Falcon and Winter Soldier. I enjoyed this series. Again, a lot of setup in it. We got our new Captain America. That suit is awesome. We got to see Zemo with the mask. That was awesome. Didn't like the Sharon Carter reveal. I hope they rectify that. And I would have liked to see a little bit more Winter Soldier Bucky with the flashbacks, but you take what you could get. All right, number 12, Iron Man, and this is the movie that started it all for the MCU, and that's why I have it. I almost could have put it higher because I really feel like, because it was the start of the MCU, you have to give it its credit. Obadiah Stane was hilarious, as well as a good villain. You know what I mean? Like you kind of, once you realized he was the villain, you could be scared of him a little bit. So I love what he did, and that he was ruthless. Number 11, Spider-Man Far From Home, and the main reason why I have this one higher than the other ones is because of what they did with Mysterio. I didn't think that they could do an adaptation of Mysterio live action, and they did it with Jake Gyllenhaal. They did it perfectly. So just for that and the new suits and everything, I have to rank Spider-Man at number 11. Now let's get into the top 10. Yes, Thor Ragnarok at number 10. I feel like this movie was a game changer, as most of these movies in the top 10 are. It really changed the trilogy for Thor. It did a good job with telling the Hulk story, and Hela was a hell of a villain. You know what I mean? So I have to give that to number 10. Good job to Taika Waititi on that. Number 9, and maybe a little early to tell, but right now I got Loki at number 9 because this series is just it's everything, man. And it's like we don't know how it's going to end just quite yet, but just seeing what they're setting up and how they're doing this, you could keep this going on with and I've heard that there is a Loki season 2 to come, but I really just enjoyed Mobius and the casting, because I remember when Owen Wilson was cast, a lot of people was kind of iffy about it, but man, they killed it. The cast and you got Tom Hiddleston doing what he does, man. Like him falling in love with himself, but a female version is so fitting for that character because of how he is. So I have to go with Loki, and I had to give WandaVision number 8 and edge out Loki just because. Now, I enjoy Loki more than WandaVision, but that's only because WandaVision has ended, and that ending really messed up WandaVision, in my opinion. The whole boner reveal really messed it up, but the fact that they had me so angry and emotionally tied is the reason why I'm putting WandaVision over Loki, because going into it week to week, they had it, and plus they executed on nailing the different TV genres. A lot of people didn't appreciate that with the black and white and everything, but you have to give Marvel Studios credit for taking a chance and doing something different and executing it in the manner that they did. I mean, they went from genre to genre with the sitcoms, and then they tied it to Wanda's story. Then they introduced the witches, and then they introduced the whole idea of her being the Scarlet Witch. I mean, to me, it doesn't get better than that. They just fumbled the ball at the very end, but I have to give them credit for, taking it 99 yards and then fumbling it on the goal line. So. All right, number 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes, when this movie originally came out, it was so different. Again, it's in its own space in the MCU. You're basically getting your Star Wars like characters, and I think that was very smart for them to do that. You got introduced to the universe more broadened, and that's kind of where it was a good setup for Thanos. Even though they took a while to kind of get to all of that, the adventures, it's fun. I don't know how they're going to continue to do this, if James Gunn is going to continue to expand upon that part of the universe, but it was so wonky, so crazy, so different. To me, it's a top 10 film in the MCU, easy. All right, now coming in at number 6, I have Black Panther. Yes, to me, this movie also was a game changer. Not even just because of the money that it made, but because of the story that they told and how they told it and how they executed it. Now, it's even taken on even more meaning now that we've lost Chadwick Boseman as the Black Panther, and it'll be interesting to see how they go forward with that. But the ensemble cast that they assembled for this, the story that they told, how awesome they made all of the characters, and how awesome they made Wakanda. They just nailed on all cylinders there. And yes, the CGI got a little wonky in that third act. A lot of people will fault it for that, but overall, I still think that's a top 10 movie, easy. One of their best that they've done. Number 5 for me, Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And the reason why Captain America Winter Soldier is number 5 for me is because this film is probably it's just for the genre that they made. Again, they executed on the kind of film they wanted to make with that whole Tom Clancy style spy thing, which is what I was kind of expecting for Black Widow to be, but it just wasn't quite there. Even though, now going back to Black Widow, Kate Shortland nailed the dark stuff, but I can tell it was Disney fired from the fact they wouldn't let her go darker. Same thing with these. The Russo brothers seem to find that tone a little easier with making it dark and making it a spy film, but still making it Disney. And that's a hard thing to balance. And I think Feige has to find his new directors and creators that can kind of balance that going forward, and he'll kind of weed out and figure out how to do that. But for me, this movie, the Winter Soldier in this was probably the best MCU villain we probably still have had, even though he's not a villain anymore. And he really the story that they tell with him and Captain America, and how Black Widow, and then you introduce Sam, it's just one of my favorites, man. It's on your left, some of the best moments from that movie. Now, for me, these next two are interchangeable, because Captain America Winter Soldier and Captain America Civil War, I couldn't decide which one I wanted to have higher because it changes. To me, I'm giving Civil War on this one the edge, just because it introduced Black Panther in a main part of the story, and it also introduced Spider-Man. And that moment that you thought would never happen, to have that happen in the way it happened in this movie, again, game changer. You know what I mean? Like, you never thought you'd see Spider-Man in the actual MCU, and then he appears in this big fight. You got all of the Avengers fighting each other, the ones that are there. And that airport scene is probably still one of the best scenes ever in the MCU for a comic book fan, just to see that come to life on the screen. So the Russo brothers still matching their tone, still doing their thing. They just took what they did in Captain America Winter Soldier and broadened it. And it basically, what for them was a prep movie to get ready for these movies to come. At number 3, Avengers In Game. Now, this is my top, how I would rank these. Some people may put it higher, some people lower. For me, Avengers Endgame had a lot of holes in it, and you give them a pass on that, because they had so many things that they had to culminate into that movie, that there had to be a lot of holes in order to get it done. But at the end of the day, the just sheer pure awesomeness of having all of the heroes, and just let me just take a second just to hear Captain America say Avengers Assemble, and you got all of the heroes coming through the portals, and you're about to fight Thanos' army. The way they set that up, with him just being there by himself with a shield broken and just everything, and then you got Tony dying at the end, and the way that he had to sacrifice himself and why it had to be him. You get Captain Marvel coming in saving the day, and you know what I mean? Like, you get Spider-Man coming back, and the way, Black Panther shows up through the portal with the army, talking about some E-Bombay. You just, that movie, it gives me chills every time I watch that scene. But for me, Infinity War was better. And the reason why I ranked it higher than Endgame is because Infinity War, you didn't really know what to expect going into it. It was going down. Thanos was coming, but you was not expecting Thanos to actually win, and he won. Really, in this movie, I mean, he reset things, man. He mopped the floor with almost all the heroes that he had to fight throughout this movie, and he won. And just leaving it on that note with everybody being dusted. Walking out of the theater, like, as a fan, kind of knowing ahead of time that they weren't dead, but just hearing other people's conversation, thinking, oh man, Spider-Man's dead, or Black Panther's dead, or whatever, it was just like, it really hit a nerve with people. So I think just the sheer power and the magnitude of what that story told, I have to put Infinity War number 2. And for me, the all-time overall number 1 MCU movie, and in my opinion, the best comic book movie of all time, and it's a battle with me between that and Batman Dark Knight, is the Avengers, the original Avengers. And the reason why is because this movie is the blueprint. This movie worked on every single level throughout the whole movie. Like, the pacing of it, the setup, the story, it's something that you just could not recreate, because where the characters were and how Joss Whedon put them together and told that story, you just could not replicate. It would never happen again. And I mean, he told it perfectly, from kind of having to explain the Hulk and why he's able to be the Hulk and be controllable, from the relationship setting up between the Hulk and Black Widow, and even setting up Captain America fighting Iron Man and Tony, and just seeing the differences of those two characters and why that was going to lead to a civil war. The one part, you didn't really get a lot of the Hawkeye that you wanted, especially with that being his first really big role, even though he was in Thor for a hot second. But how they played with Shield and Nick Fury, and how all of that stuff tied together. I think Joss Whedon knocked it out of the park, and for me, that is my #1 all-time MCU film. So that's my list, guys. So far, updated, and with the new additions of ShangChi and What If added to it. So that's 29 projects in all where we're at right now. We got a lot more projects to come. I'll probably hold off on the next list until after Spider-Man No Way Home, just because we have Hawkeye, we got Eternals, and then that. And then I'll probably drop another one of these that's updated for all 32 projects at that point. And then, of course, we'll get to see if I can go in and add maybe Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Daredevil or something to this list, depending on what they do and how they try to canonize everything that's happened before. So I haven't forgot about those things. But that's my list, guys. This is an installment I have called Don't At Me. It's just my opinion, what I think about things. I'd like to know your opinion and your updated list for the MCU projects. Has anything changed? I know I kind of wanted to change Loki and WandaVision, but on second thought and re-looking at it, I still think WandaVision reigns supreme because of the potential and the originality and the concept of what they did there. So let me know down in the comment section if your list has changed and how you add these new projects to the list. And this is Armand for E = MCU. I'm out.